Nannie Doss, the Jolly Black Widow. It was a cold evening in 1945. Japan had just surrendered to the Allied powers, marking the end of World War II. Among the celebrants of this win was Harrelson, a young man who would rape a young woman named Nannie Doss, causing her to break down and become a female serial killer. Feeling humiliated, Doss would feed her assailant a jar of rat poison, causing him to take his last breath that same night. Doss has been called the Jolly Black Widow and the Giggling Nanny. Putting this aside, the story of one of America's most famous serial killers is gruesome enough to send a chill through anyone's spine. If anyone was destined to become a monster, you could say it was Nannie. Psychologists sent to examine Nannie at the prison she was being held at painted her as a mentally unstable woman with a continual history of abuse that had started at just 7 years old. After hitting her head on a metal bar, causing her to suffer from continuous blackouts and depression, which she would later blame for her mental instability. Having been raised by a controlling father, Doss failed to receive a proper education, given that her dad forced her to work on the family farm rather than giving her the right to attend school. Her father further prevented her from wearing makeup or attractive clothing, causing Doss's hatred to rise, given that she couldn't be like the other girls her age. By the age of 16, she had already been married to her first husband, Charlie Braggs, who, like her, had a controlling parent. As a response to her mother-in-law continually taking her husband's attention from her, Doss picked up drinking and smoking habits. 10 years later, and with 2 deceased daughters, Doss decided to get a divorce and start what would become the beginning of her killing spree. In 1929, Doss decided it was time for her to get a new husband and married Robert Franklin Harrelson. It was during this marriage when Malvina, the only surviving daughter from her previous marriage, gave birth to her first son. Malvina let her mother carry her son after giving labor, which proved to be a great mistake as the baby mysteriously died moments later. After getting over this tragic incident, Malvina gave birth to another son. However, after getting into a nasty fight with her mother, Malvina repeated the same deadly mistake that had cost her the life of her previous child. Once again, she left her son alone with a monster. Under Doss's care, her grandchild died of asphyxiation under what were thought to be unknown circumstances. Not having enough with the killing of her own blood, Doss collected $500 from a life insurance she had taken out on her grandchild. The rest of her killings all began like this: finding a new man who she thought could give her a happily ever after, marrying them, and then proceeding to kill him or any other surrounding kin. The way Doss saw this, she was just killing anyone who didn't deserve to live. The way her declaration has it, after her murders, she would set out to look for someone who would fix her broken heart, and men would start a relationship with her, thinking she was a vulnerable angel when in reality, she was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Either way, an unescapable fact was that her husband always ended up dead. Dawson's urges to find new prey became harder and harder to control as time went on. After only meeting him 3 days prior, early Nannie would become the third husband of this evil creature. Throughout this marriage, Nannie constantly left the house, probably sneaking out to kill helpless victims or to start her quest on finding a husband that would replace Lanning after she murdered him. Sure enough, months after their marriage, Lanning died of what was said to be heart failure. At his funeral, the Black Widow didn't hesitate to produce fake tears, causing the whole town to empathize her. This was just a part of her nasty plan to get everyone's attention drawn away from the fact that the deceased man had never suffered from any heart condition in his life. However, after finding out that her husband left their house to his sister, the house mysteriously burned down, causing the insurance money to be sent to Nannie, who quickly banked it and fled in search of a new bachelor. Desperately trying to find someone, Nannie joined a dating service called the Diamond Circle Club. Here, she met Richard L. Morton. The couple married in 1952. After finding out that he was adulterous, Nannie couldn't resist killing him. Before abruptly ending her husband's life, the Black Widow poisoned her own mother and then proceeded on poisoning her husband. Each time getting closer and closer to her doom, Nannie married her final husband, Samuel Dawes, in June of 1953. After coming home from the hospital due to an apparent digestive tract infection, Dawes was eager to see his wife. What he didn't know was that his wife, Nannie Dawes, would be waiting for him to later kill him that evening, in order to be compensated by 2 life insurance policies she had taken out on him. The sudden death of her husband alarmed his doctor, proving that it was a fatal mistake to kill him after recently being released from the hospital. After issuing an autopsy, it was revealed that Dawes had died from large amounts of arsenic, causing everyone to suspect Nannie and eventually leading to her capture the next day. In the end, Nannie Dawes is proof that evil will eventually be stopped. On May 17, 1955, Nannie confessed to the killings of 4 of her husbands, her mother, her sister, her grandson, and her mother-in-law. She was sentenced to life imprisonment and was not given the death penalty because of her sex. Instead, she was given life in prison. After a decade of being behind bars, Nannie Dawes' evil ended in 1965 after she died in the hospital ward of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. Nannie Dawes, alive starting November 4th, 1905 through June 2nd, 1965.